2013 budget proposal as is being examined by the National Assembly. Well, Babajide Ogunsanwo joins us now. He's a data and information analyst. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Chairman, thank you.
You've been studying this 2013 budget proposal, as well as keeping an eye on the goings-on in the National Assembly and the executive. What have you found so far on this budget?
It's been interesting. If you look at where we're coming from, and you're looking at where the budget is today. So we have a proposed budget of about 4.9 trillion naira, as compared to a 2012 budget of about 4.7 trillion. What you look at is the government is, give or take, averagely planning to increase expenditure by about 5%. However, if you also consider that inflation is expected to grow at about 12%, if you net that off the budget expected growth of 5%, what we really have is a net position that takes us back. So on the face of it, the budget seems to have grown by 5%. The reality is, if you adjust the budget for inflation, we're actually behind by 7%. We're not only behind by 7%, the budget is actually less than what it is in 2012. So on an inflation-adjusted basis, the budget is actually 4.5 trillion as compared to the 2012 budget of 4.7 trillion. So if you look at what the government is actually going to be spending in 2013 as compared to 2012, is a reduction of about 344 billion naira.
So because inflation is a reduction in your spending power, right?
Certainly. You look at give or take inflation of about 10 to 12% in 2013. If the government is spending 4.7 trillion in 2012, and is planning to spend 4.9 trillion in 2013. Those are the real numbers. However, if you adjust those numbers for inflation, you're looking at a budget expected growth of 5% on one hand. You're looking at inflation on the other hand of about 12%. So on a net position, you have a minus 7%, which actually takes us back to even less than where we are in 2012.
Do you think this, the position of the National Assembly now would help buffer that negative?
The position of the House of Assembly may not really help buffer that negative. What we have is a proposed benchmark of, say, $75. You have an argument of we moving the budget to $80. If you look at that argument, the expected increase, even if we do move to an $80 benchmark, the additional income for the federal government will be about 354 billion naira. That wouldn't still make up for the expected negative based on inflation. So what you will expect is for us to find alternative ways of increasing revenue. That is the only way we're going to be able to make up for that expected decrease.
Like what, the non-oil sector?
Non-oil sector, you're looking at, currently you have agric, which is the biggest component of GDP, which is about 40%. And the 2013 budget, we have about 81 billion naira, which has been put in place for the agricultural sector. However, if you're looking at other sectors, we will expect to see more investments in the agricultural sector. You will expect to see considerably more investments as well, even in the educational sector, which will all improve the dynamics of the budget.
But if you were to intervene, sorry, Chairman, if you were to intervene in this $75 or $80 benchmark row, what would you say the middle ground should be? Again,
it's not about getting a middle ground, because the analysis shows that if you have $75 or you have $80, it really doesn't make much of a difference. If you, for example, move to $80, what you will have as compared to $75, like I said, is 354 million naira as extra revenue to the federal government. If you want to put, let's put that number in perspective, 354 billion naira, and the government chose, rather to use it to reduce the deficit, the government chose to use the extra revenue of $5 on each barrel, which comes to 354 billion naira for the welfare of the nation. Give or take, saying...
Billion naira or dollars, sorry.
354 billion naira, okay. Billion naira. If the government chooses to average it on everybody, 160 million people, what you get is an average of 2,200 naira per person annually, which is approximately about 6 naira per day. So more or less, moving the benchmark from $75 to $80 only gives the average Nigerian 6 naira, which is like a sachet of pure water, every day. Yes, that probably could reduce your test a bit, but will an extra 6 naira for each person increase the quality of living? Maybe not. Will an extra 6 naira improve the standard of living? Most
But
likely
that's
not.
if you look at it like that. But if you look at it in terms of investing it in capital projects, as the House is proposing it should be, don't you think that 354 billion naira, look at how much you're giving out for the floods now that we did not even think of, it will definitely go a long way?
It will go some way. It probably wouldn't go a long way. Again, because of the huge population, what we have is, will the impact be felt at the grassroots? Most likely the impact wouldn't be felt at the grassroots. What we should be focusing on is, rather than get caught up in the budget expenditure trap, we should be looking at how we can improve revenue. So for example, we compare, we always talk about the BRIC nations and how we want to be like the BRIC nations. You have a country like Brazil, for example, population of about 194 million people. The government's expenditure per citizen in Brazil is about $5,500, which is 25 times what our budget is, which is 25 times what the government is planning to spend on each Nigerian. You have a country like Russia, for example. The population of Russia is about 143 million people. The average, the government in Russia spends about $4,400 per citizen, which is 22 times what the government of Nigeria spends on each citizen. If you take a look at the budget, you're looking at about 4.9 trillion naira. And that gives you an average budget per person in Nigeria of about $200. In other words, what we need to look at is focus less on the historicals, which we are caught up with, looking at where we're coming from the budgetary side. What we need to look at is where we want to be. But as long as we're caught up with the budgetary plan of always looking at where we're coming from, rather than looking at the nations that we want to be like, we wouldn't move forward. You have South Africa. South Africa has a population of about 51 million people. The government in South Africa spends about $2,200 per citizen, which is 10 times what we are spending on each citizen in Nigeria. So we have to keep looking at how we will make more money to increase our government expenditure per capita, rather than keep looking at where we're coming from. As long as we keep looking at where we're coming from, we wouldn't really move forward.
But some people will also say that, we haven't exactly looked at how we truly spend this money, because as Chairman pointed out earlier, that there are lots of leakages, so that even if you're making more revenue and you seem to be pouring it in a basket, chances are that you will never feel any impact no matter the amount of money you make.
The leakages definitely have to be blocked. But as much as you're blocking leakages, if you take a second look at the budget, you will find out that there are so many areas of the budget that we're actually under budgeting. Let's take something that is very, very critical to all of us, security, for example. You pick a copy of the budgets of the Nigerian Police Formation and Commands, for example. The budget for fueling is just 699 million. If you want to understand how low that is, for example, you break it down to all the 36 states. In essence, what you have as fueling budget from the Nigerian police for the entire federation is 53,000 naira per day for each state. In Lagos alone, Lagos requires about 541 million naira for fueling of police vehicles, 541 million naira. If you look at those numbers, what it means is the police budget for fuel, for example, for Lagos State, only comes to about 19 million naira, which means by 2013, once 2013 starts, in 2 weeks, the Lagos State Police Command wouldn't have any more fuel for his vehicles. So clearly you understand where and why it's so difficult for the Nigerian police to fight crime. Yes, you have lots of investments going into ammunition and lots of investments going into equipment, but it really makes no sense if you invest so much in equipment and you don't have enough fuel to move those equipments to site.